you this year a little bit, haven't I?
Definitely.
It's been lovely. And Nicole has a few hats, well, wears a few different hats in different areas of her career and as a mum as well. And I'm really excited to have this chat with you because of all the diverse roles and career choices that you've made. So thank you and welcome.
Looking forward to it.
Excellent. It's very hot here, so we've got the fan going, so I'm sorry if you can hear the brrr of the fan, but we need the cool,
Definitely
don't we?
do.
Okay, so let's start with your teaching career that you have gone back to this year. How have you been finding that?
It's been really interesting because I last taught over 15 years ago, and I loved teaching, adored being with the kids, adored the process of education, and taking a break was very much a decision about prioritising family. But the return to teaching has been both wonderful in reminding myself of skills and interests that had been dormant for a long time, and certain parts of stepping back into the classroom, it felt like coming home. It felt like this is where I felt really comfortable doing and being and talking and negotiating. So that felt quite empowering, I think. You know, when you step away from something, there are parts of it that don't transfer, and they are very much aligned with the previous way of earning your living or doing something. And I know when I stopped, there was a certain grief about that. So returning to it was about taking up some of those loves that, for a whole range of reasons, it had to be, put to the side. Other parts of it felt a little uncomfortable because things have changed and I have changed, and things that I may have prioritised previously I no longer rate as important, and so there was a bit of a renegotiation even of what I saw my role as a teacher as, now that I'm stepping into that space as a mother and a former business owner, and also I guess that notion of society has changed now too, and what we are preparing our students for and how we're preparing them is quite different. So there was that discomfort of when what used to be natural and easy, you now need to sort of reposition and relearn. But it was great. Even though it was uncomfortable at times, it felt as though I was wrestling with something that was really important, not only to me but to also who I was. I
have a friend in the UAE who teaches uni students, and her biggest thing in life as a educator is to be there to support the children. Yes, the curriculum's there, and yes, the business, which is like the school, is sort of there, but her whole emphasis and ethos of it was that she was there for those students and she was there to support them in their education.
Well, see, when education's like that, it is its most powerful, because it should always be about the individual. And when you can take what you're supposed to be doing in the context you're supposed to be doing it, but make it so it gives that individual, each student, the best chance of success, that's when it really works. To do that, though, you've actually got to really understand the process that you operate within, and you also have to really understand, I guess, the subject matter that you're dealing with in order to make it an individual process. But ultimately, I mean, you can quote Shakespeare till the cows come home, but if you are not helping that student become a functional, healthy citizen, then it actually doesn't have the same value. So,
Fantastic. Oh, yeah. We could talk about that for a long time. Okay. No, but we will. Okay, so this wasn't in our sort of recording, but what do you think about the fact that what the kids are sort of learning now isn't really, well, it's not that it's not relevant, but it's sort of outdated, the way that the world is moving so fast and technology is moving so fast, the things that they're learning and how they're learning. Do you think the education system is keeping up in that respect, or do you see that there is a movement happening within the system?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think some of I don't like to use the word old ways because people equate old with outdated, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think some of the lessons of the way things have been done previously are still really valuable, and some of the problems that we face now within society are because those lessons are not being applied to the new ways of doing things. So I don't like to I guess,
Just
dispose
stay
of.
Stay there. That's really good. That's really clever to think that way too, because does that come back to, do you think, values and that sort of thing that schools used to sort of hold dear, that have now been sort of put away so much to make room for that sort of more modern technology and that sort of thing, that disconnect in a way?
Oh, absolutely, because I think the value of technology is as a tool that should actually allow us opportunities and ways of enhancing, the values that we live out and the choices that we make. And it's when you take on the tool without having a platform upon which to use it effectively that the tool becomes the God, really, rather than something that can help us as people, function in a world and look after the environment and all of those sorts of things. So, you're absolutely right.
See,
I think,
that people, where I'm hearing the chatter is from entrepreneurs and all that sort of thing, really dissing the education system, that they're not giving the kids the tools that they need to work. But I think what you're saying is actually more correct than what is being said out there.
Yeah, look, some of
because it's not there supporting the kids going through. If the basis or the base of their education and their way of thinking isn't there, then all the technology in the world is not going to support.
I have a lot to say about entrepreneurship. Because it really is the buzzword today, and it is held up
as... This is what these kids are growing up with,
isn't it? And it's held up as being the way to advance yourself, to advance society, to reignite careers. And look, I don't at all disagree with that, but it's a set of tools that are often upheld as valuable, that are about starting businesses and understanding solutions to problems. Often, lots of entrepreneurship doesn't last though. It's not able to be sustained by balance as the business grows and as it faces challenges. So in and of itself, it's fabulous, but it's not the only tool set that's necessary in order for us as individuals to function and for society to function. So, we're always holding up something as being, the most important thing. And look, it's really, really important in offering a lot of people opportunity to provide solutions for problems. But if those solutions are going to be implemented and sustained long term, that skill set is not necessarily the only thing that is going to be able to do it. And that's, I think, where education is always walking this quite tightrope of where we put the energy into what skills and how we support people to learn them, and in what context you learn them. So
and
there's
learning
no easy
being
answer.
the main word there.
Absolutely.
How to learn.
Absolutely, and ask the questions and provide answers, and then also having the confidence to put forward your solution and believe in it when times get tough. So I think our expectations on education are much greater today than what they ever were. But in a sense, in doing that, we have placed enormous pressure back on educational institutions to produce that. When a lot of that really, I think, is the responsibility of families and communities over and above the institutions where we send our children and students and young adults to be educated. So it's much more holistic.
We were talking about that a bit before, that we could spend like another hour or
let's
so
do
on
so.
that. The fact of, I guess, the bringing up in the news the last couple of days is about the fact that Australian, I think they were high school kids or 14, 15-year-olds. It's a lower standard than some other First Nation countries in their curriculum and stuff like that. And my husband and I were talking about it, it's like so much pressure is put on teachers and the school and that sort of
and
curriculum
absolutely.
to give them everything.
Yeah, and you know, the interesting thing about things like that is it's very dependent on the test that you set.
Yeah.
Because you know you write a test, you write a survey, however you want to measure it, wanting to find out certain things. Well, you know you can get whatever results you want depending on how you write the test as well. So I think any information like that needs to be viewed in a broader context of what it's actually measuring and whether we actually value those you know, those criteria. I'm not saying that there are not issues with the Australian education system by any means. I think there are areas that definitely need to be addressed. But yeah, I'm always a bit cautious about that sort of, you know.
Okay, so you, I sort of get an inkling what you're saying now, because it was Poland and they mentioned European countries. Now, I know that some countries, they run, GCSE is run over 2 years. I know A levels and AS levels now run over 2 years. So if they're coming in and putting a test to our kids that run over maybe 1 year and then have to go the next year to learn the next lot of curriculum that is being set for them, then they won't be able to know that knowledge already. So
and,
you're
and,
right,
and
really.
some systems really prioritise rote learning and recall of facts, and others want to prioritise students' ability to analyse and evaluate and problem solve. So
what are you doing as a teacher? Why aren't you in the media or the government
keep
putting
going.
this to rest? Because that has not been brought up at all. It's just the media's just been
I think that's also because
out this whole
society
thing.
is so much about outrage at the moment. You know, it's about here's a news article. Let's have all this outrage and drama about it, rather than trying to really understand it often and place it within a context and decide on the Western. I
hide
think so.
what's really going on over here. We'll talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, you know, people like drama. They like to be able to say, oh, this is, you know, outrageous. What are we doing? What are you doing? Why aren't you doing it better? And I mean, those questions have to be asked, but sometimes within a context where people are actually interested in the solutions, not just the drama of asking the questions.
Love it. I love you having you here. That's what I mean. We can talk all the time.
Let's do it.
Okay, so putting that in, coming back to you as a teacher and going back to it, what sort of changes have you seen? Not so much, let's not talk about yourself, but let's talk about the kids and what the expectations that have been put on them. Have you seen a huge difference from like coming back, that there has been a change on the kids?
I think certainly technology has fundamentally changed students' understanding of authority that is gained from people being a source of information. I really think it used to be that teachers and other members in society were respected because they had information that they could give you that you would, you know, find useful. Whereas now technology has provided access to information, you know, in untold amounts. And so it's not just good enough for you to be able to say, well, you need to do this because I know more than you. There's a real attitude now where there has to be sort of a much more open acceptance of the kids' ability to question and right to question, and your ability to answer them in a way that encourages them to continue learning, but also maybe makes them question some of the understandings that they have and the reasons they're asking questions and the way they're asking questions. So kids have a very different attitude, I think, towards the process of education and what it can offer them. And probably...
And they can't really believe in Google all the time either, like,
no.
Because that is just a source of information. They've got to have more sources to be able to go, okay, then that's the quality that I'm after, that's the answer that I'm after.
Absolutely. And they're willing to do that, I think, but they need support and encouragement to see, you know, the pitfalls of it and the advantages of it. And I think you have to be on your toes a lot more as a teacher now than what you used to be. And kids have a sense of a much greater inherent right to want to know why they're doing what they're doing, rather than we're here and this is what you're going to do, which is very understandable. I mean, if you can't explain why they're doing it, then why are you doing it anyway? But yes, it is a different mindset, and also the way of doing things is significantly different now. With so much is done online and access to information is so immediate. It requires an integration of the old understandings, I think, of the way people learn, very much, whilst also accommodating a whole different framework of how people can access information today.
What do you think the role of the school community has become? Because there are still some gorgeous, fabulous schools out there that build school community and friendship and belonging. And how do you think that the school communities have changed, and is everyone sort of taking that on board now?
I think...
and of course this is your opinion.
Absolutely.
But I really,
yeah.
I think it's fabulous what you've got to say.
I think people have an expectation of being much more invested in a school now than what they did previously, because it very much used to be that students would just attend the closest school and there was no question about that. Whereas now there is an understanding that you match your child to what particular schools offer, and when you choose a school, you choose a school community. And they can be, I guess, groups that can really enhance the experience for your child and also for you as a parent.
Yeah.
Because, once you've got kids at school, you spend a lot of time within that community, and that can be a really powerful, supportive group for you as a parent. Or it can be something that really makes it hard work for the teachers and in a sense the other students. So any time where you have groups of people who theoretically are working towards the same goals, they can be really, really powerful.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen that way.
Yes. Yes. Well, we won't go into
No.
that side of things because, well, having 3 kids gone through the whole schooling system, that whole thing, there has been times I've experienced it. I've probably been part of it. Everyone is working for the good of the children in the school, but there are things that there
Absolutely.
are ups and downs, aren't there? Yeah,
Certainly
definitely.
are.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's change hats. You're also let me get this correct, a social media strategist. So tell me...
How did that happen?
How? Where? When?
That came about because I was very concerned that my children were going to know a lot more about the social media landscape than I was, and so I wanted to understand enough to be able to be one step ahead of them. Also being in business, I realised if I didn't learn how to use social media for the business, then I would end up having to pay someone else to do it.
And we'll talk about the business in a minute.
Yeah. But then once I started to really understand it, as an English teacher where communication is fundamental to what I value, I realised that so much of social media was just about communicating effectively through a different medium. And so the interest was really about how to build community, how to communicate effectively through these other platforms that are significantly different to feature articles in newspapers or telephone conversations or however we have chosen to communicate in the past. And like all genres, they can be powerfully good or they can be powerfully bad. So that's where my main motivation remains, is just understanding how we can build connection in communities through platforms that are created for us by other organisations. And that's the part of it I really enjoy and appreciate most.
And you've got incredible skills around that, and I think maybe it comes from your background because of that.
Well,
you seem to be able to get straight to the point, and then it's not like a newspaper article though. It has to be summarised so quickly. Like if we're talking Instagram or Facebook, it's a quick snapshot, but give the details. So no flowery words, no massive descriptions. But when you've come and you've helped me with my social media and given me the tips and that sort of thing, it's been really good advice on how to get that content, like whatever I'm talking about, across really quickly and clearly.
Thanks.
Like you've,
I think, but it really, as an English teacher, it is just another venue to think about how to use language most effectively in that platform to achieve
Yeah.
whatever your goals are.
Yeah.
And so obviously the more adept you are at using words for the purpose that you want, then the easier that becomes. Having said that, I think even within social media platforms, there are some people who are more naturally aligned to particular ways of communicating and therefore, you know, particular platforms. But any form of communication comes from a value base about how you want to communicate, and inherent in your communication what you want to tell people about how you value them, and what is important to you. And I think sometimes the succinctness of social media allows you to do that really clearly. You know, this is what I am on about, and this is why, and inviting other people to be part of that journey or part of that communication process.
And not just a robot.
Absolutely,
Buying
yeah,
the likes
yeah.
and that sort of
Increasingly, as people within society become more disconnected, and you know, loneliness is such a big issue. The power to create connections with people via social media and build up friendships and build up relationships it is often untapped, because people, I guess, try and communicate without understanding the values that are communicated with it. But being quite intentional with that, I think, is really important.
It's always good when you do put something up and you get a lot of feedback and talk, and then those sort of talks, I've got a couple of ladies now that we're on all the time sort of thing, and I don't even know where they live, but it's really nice having that communication and that connection with them.
Absolutely,
and it's all been through pictures and just quick sort of blurbs. That's how it's developed.
Because communicating with other people feeds our soul. You know, it's really, really important to us. And so ways that you can explore to do that effectively, that's authentic to you and reflects who you are in a way that doesn't, you know, invade your privacy, whatever, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so are you juggling these two sort of, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about the other business, the other third hat. It's like the juggling trick,
It is,
really.
it is. Yep.
But I think that they're all synced, really. So, horse stud owner.
Yes.
Which is your passion.
Has been ever since I was tiny little girl. That's all I wanted was a pony, and my whole family, my siblings all share that passion, and their children and my children. So for me, the love of horses is very much interwoven into who we were as a family, who we are as a family, and my life is better when there are horses in it. There was a period of my life when I had small children, and it was quite disconnected from the horses and other things like teaching and poetry, and it actually reminded me of how important it is for us to understand what feeds your soul, and what gives you joy, and make sure that that's part of your life if it's possible. Horses have been, other than short periods of time, always part of my life, and breeding horses now, it's just something that I thoroughly enjoy. It takes me back to my farming roots, and it's a whole nother community of people who understand that passion and who are part of that part of my life. That some of those people are my people. You know, it's just always been very important to me.
Okay, so I'm not taking the mickey out of you, but like the horsey people,
yep.
you get, there is that label
Absolutely.
out there, because
Absolutely.
you are a group of people
who are
unto
very
your own.
distinct. Yes,
yeah, definitely. What is it? What do you think it is?
True horsey people.
Yeah.
All right.
Because sometimes I go, oh yeah, they're. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the one thing, but you just definitely know.
They're people who are doing it through the love of horses.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the look of horses, the sound of horses, the smell of horses, is a comfort and is a joy, and the priority of making sure that they are well looked after, the process of educating them is just something that's really important. And other people who understand that, it's like a link in communication when you find someone who shares your values without even having to say that. And you can be within a group of people who are horse owners, but still know those who are actually there because they love horses, and those who are there for a whole range of other reasons that aren't necessarily bad, but they are just different. Yeah,
I think I just worked it out. You're saying that when you meet people that are horsey type people, like you said, that it's the love of it. It's because it's like they're in the wrong environment. So when they're working or doing other jobs, they're not completely comfortable, because you've got to put them back into the environment where they are, which is in the stables or you know, in the paddocks with the horses. That's where their passion is. It's like they're out of water, so to speak, if they're meant to be on, you know, a sailor on the land. He's no good. He's got his sailor legs on.
That's right. And you know, life is so busy these days that we layer all these things on, and it often means that we get separated from the things that give us real joy. So to be able to intentionally say, that is what you know, brings light and joy and energy into my life, and then make sure that that's part of your life is really important, I think. Yeah.
Your photos that you put up, I just see a bit of a tilt of a hat with you. You've got an arm here. It's just gorgeous. You can tell that you're nearly part and one of that.
They may dispute that, those horses.
They are.
But yeah, no, they are. Yeah, I love them. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So okay. So, how would you rate success? Like, you've got three incredible and very diverse career sets. Even though they're entwined, they truly are. You're describing everything here today.
Do you know, that is a question I have wrestled quite a bit with of late, because I think when I first started out in my career, my definition and understanding of success was quite narrow. Partly because I think I found a career that aligned with my values, that I was comfortable doing, that I was successful in. As time has gone on, the other things that I have chosen to do and experienced some measure of success in has reminded me that success is very much about finding ways to live out your values, and it can be done in lots and lots of different ways. And so it's a much broader definition, I think, of success. To the point where I now tell my children things about, you know, ways to guide their lives or decisions that they should make, there's no way I would have said 20 years ago. You know, I think 20 years ago, if you had asked me my academic expectations of my children, I would have been quite strict in what I expected, whereas now my definition for them for success when they finish schooling is not necessarily about the highest academic grades. You know, I think they will go on to experience success in life for reasons well outside what mark they got in a particular subject. So for me, success is all about living out your values, the quality of the relationships that you have, you know, the way you do things and what you choose to do. So yeah, it has definitely changed. Thank goodness, probably.
But, you know, I don't think that's just maturing and getting older and growing with your kids. I think that our world has a lot to do with that as well.
Absolutely.
You know, like Michael's mum's 91, and she was always adapting and changing, and she became nearly modern in the way that she is as the older she got as well. My grandma certainly did as well. I used to call her, she was so modern in the end.
Yep. Oh, look, and I think success is very much linked to that ability to adapt and change. but as you go through that process, to hold on to the things that are most important and of greatest value to you. So the change isn't necessarily about the values, unless you've had reason to really question them and rethink them, but how they are lived out in what way, and is very much part of the definition of success for me now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we've sort of covered so many of the questions today, and it's all been mishmash. I have no idea where we're going to go now. But if there were anybody out there that was wanting to go back, starting a career, what would be 3 survival tips or 3 things that you would recommend to that person, do you think? And let's say a female, a woman, going back to work or changing careers or just looking at, moving across into something different. What would you think?
I would say do what you need to do in order to become very good at the things that give you joy and are adaptable in certain circumstances. And one of the things in stepping out of education that became apparent to me was that many of the skills that made me successful within that field were actually also really useful in business in other areas. So if there are those skills that are important to you and important to your career, get really good at them. Do the work in order to be able to have real confidence in some of those skills, because then as other things change, they will help you stand in good stead.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good advice.
And there's all this talk about failing forward and not being fearful, and it's mostly good advice, except I also think that there are ways of doing that also give you less chance of failure. So not being afraid of giving it a go, because you never quite know what's around the corner. So I guess being brave in trying new things, and I hear so many women talk themselves out of opportunities and talk themselves out of giving something a red hot go because they doubt themselves or they doubt the circumstances. And I would just say set yourself up as best you can for success and absolutely go for it, without any sense that if it fails, it doesn't necessarily mean that the failure is you. There are a whole range of reasons why things don't work, and when they're not working,
don't internalise it.
Yes, be strong enough to try and identify what that is. If you can change that, well and good. If you can't, it doesn't necessarily mean that you as an individual have failed. Being able to separate that sense of self from career and jobs and whatever, I think is really important, if you're actually going to have the energy long term to keep changing jobs or to keep seeking new careers. And for that sense of self requires balance and self-reflection and support really from family and friends to keep it focused and moving forward.
Incredible advice. Incredible advice.
Drink more water.
Oh my goodness.
Ride a horse. Ride a horse.
My daughter has to come out with.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have to line that up. Okay, so let's finish up. And I've loved this. And would you come back and chat more? We'll stick on one subject and try to get through a whole week. We'll just stay with the one subject.
Sounds great.
Okay. Was there something that you wish you had have known earlier, like had it been told earlier, or that would have helped you, made it easier for you, or I don't know, is there something that you wish that you had have been told earlier in life in general? Too big a question?
No.
Did I throw that one on you?
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just thinking, I was very, very, very fortunate in having a mother who absolutely just gave her 100% support. And she was also a safe place to land if things didn't go well. That there was no fear of what you were doing as not being good enough. You know, there was always that sense that as long as you, you know, did your best, then that was the success. That was something to be, you know, celebrated. So I was really, really fortunate to have that as a basis. I think I think probably one of the challenges for me is to try and be satisfied with my own mothering, that I am also communicating that with my own children. Having said that, so much has changed since then, and so many, you know, accepted ways of doing things are different. But
the fundamentals
think,
are still
well, they
there.
are. But I think probably I would come back and say, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, because you know, you can set high standards, and when you don't reach them, that's one thing. But then when you're hard on yourself for so long because you didn't reach them, that's a whole other thing. That is, you know, all those stories that you impose upon yourself, that you carry a weight around about, which is, you know, unnecessary and not healthy. So I think
that's
at times
that's a whole topic right
it is,
there
right,
in itself.
Next time. But I think that is probably a piece of advice.
Women tend to do that.
Absolutely.
They do that.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes back to success and failure as well. It's the internalizing, the inner voice that keeps.
Absolutely.
And that inner voice usually isn't your own inner voice. It's things that you've heard or you've been told as you've been growing up, that sort of thing. So
absolutely true. And you know, because I lost Mum 20 years ago, and so
wow,
as
you
time.
I thought she was still
No. Well, and her. On one hand, her voice is still very powerful. You know, that sense of being incredibly loved and supported is still really, really strong.
I like that when you said the landing, she was always a safe place to land. That's incredible, powerful.
It's an incredible gift to give to someone. You know, that sense of safety and softness and support.
I'm sure that's what happens with your kids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not ask them.
No.
But
they're not old enough yet.
No. But I think because she has been gone for so long, at times I have found myself, instead of hearing her voice in those circumstances, I start telling myself other stories. And that's when I've had to pull myself up and say, stop being so hard on yourself. Check whether that story that you are saying is actually true. And that also speaks to the power of having other people in your life who pull you up and say, actually, the perspective you have is not necessarily right. You know, maybe you need to think of it this way or whatever. So that's another whole conversation.
Right, we could do a weekly talk. I think that's what we have to do. Well, we're going to leave it there because you do have to rush off, and I do appreciate you taking the time today.
I love chatting to you, Nikki.
It's fabulous. And I really want to thank you because you've opened up about quite a lot of things, and I really do appreciate that. And
you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And you ask great questions, which is really, really important.
Okay.
We need to ask more good questions, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's what this whole thing is about, is asking good questions, getting it from different people with all their different perspectives to help other women and men out there, and up and coming kids as well. Giving them a bit of direction,
Good
I guess.
You.
Oh, well, it'll happen. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're
all
welcome.
Right. So don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the chat room today. I'd love to hear from you, so leave us a message, and the people I interview are quite happy to answer any questions that you have also. Take care, and we'll see you soon.